And this is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Sandra Smith, Kimberly Guilfoyle, actress and Fox News contributor Stacey Dash. And today's hashtag one lucky guy, Dr. Keith Abloh, and he is outnumbered. Welcome.
Welcome, Doctor.
Well, thanks for having me back. I'm having a problem. Anytime I'm not here, I compare the energy level to here, and I find it lacking.
What do you do about that deficit in your regular
I've started
life?
Therapy, and I'm going to work it out, or I'll just come back more often.
You're talking to the man in the mirror,
No,
huh?
just
I do.
therapy
Yes, of
himself.
course. I do visit a therapist. Yes,
Really?
of course.
Huh.
Absolutely, because none of us are finished works.
Aw.
Right?
That's kind of sweet.
Even hockey players, they get lessons, right, from other hockey players.
Sure.
Doesn't matter if you're Bobby Orr.
in a psychosis kind of a way.
Yes.
Now, I like comparing myself to Bobby Orr in therapy. I'm the Bobby Orr of psychiatry.
Well, there you go.
But I still need lessons.
Score.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Pleasure.
All right. After weeks of watching thousands of children pour across our southern international border illegally and unattended, the political pressure over the border crisis appears to be reaching the White House. The Obama administration has just announced in this hour it will ask Congress for $3.7 billion in emergency funds to deal with the wave of illegal immigrants pouring into America. This as officials insist they are still seeking expanded authority to speed up the deportations, although there's some conflict over what exactly they're actually doing. And President Obama, who's set to travel to Texas tomorrow for some fundraising, now will sit down with Governor Rick Perry to talk about the crisis. That is actually a new development. And it came just hours after Governor Perry spoke up, saying he wanted a substantive meeting, not just a handshake on the airport tarmac with the president. In a letter to the governor, senior White House advisor Valerie Jarrett wrote, quote, "The president would be welcome to a meeting with you while he's in Texas. In addition, he asked me to invite you to join him for a meeting to discuss the situation on the border with faith leaders and local elected officials in Dallas on Wednesday," end quote. But while the president will be in Texas, still no plans for him actually to travel to the border and see what's happening firsthand. Republican Senator John Cornyn of Texas says such a visit would be a wake-up call that the president really needs.
It's puzzling and it's frustrating that the President of the United States chooses the path he apparently is going to take rather than one that will help him solve problems. During his trip to Texas, it would take the president less than an hour on Air Force One to visit the border and to see what I and so many of my colleagues have seen firsthand, a very sad situation that could have been prevented.
Another lawmaker recently visited overcrowded border detention centers, many packed with children who crossed alone.
I think the president sent the message when he began to do administrative legalizations, things that he doesn't have the authority to do as President of the United States. The word went forth to these countries. So many of them are just coming and turning themselves in very willfully, knowing that after they're held for a few hours, they're going to be released into the interior of the United States.
Meanwhile, critics like syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer say the administration is letting the border crisis fester as part of a larger political calculation.
I don't think he is lost on this. I think he knows what to do. He wants to win the political argument with Hispanics and other pro-immigration groups, and he's doing it for political reasons. Very, very cynically.
Headline here. The president wants, did you catch it, not $2 billion, which we had previously reported before just noon when this information popped, but $3.7 billion. Plain and simple, we are paying a huge price for something that, at least from everything I'm reading, began as a problem to be dealt with and not a crisis. Now look at what it is. Kimberly, how did we get here?
You know, how did we get here? I think, first of all, this presented a great opportunity for our president to be personally present, to understand the situation up front, to go to the border, to see the crisis for himself, because I think that's best how he can make decisions. Sure, you have people around you and you have some great experts, but if you don't go there and see it for yourself, how are you well equipped to be able to decide what the next move should be? And it seems that this is a very familiar theme, operating from behind. Why did this get to the point of a crisis instead of something that we could have headed off a problem? Now everybody's in a really untenable position because everyone wants to be able to help the children and And certainly before, Harris, there was legislation that existed to try and help children, to prevent them from being the victims of sexual trafficking. So there are laws that are on the books right now that provide children with due process under the law that are in this country to make sure to address the concerns. So that needs to be taken care of. But what we see is that they're saying this law is insufficient, and they're trying to go back to blame, President Bush. But the fact of the matter is, the law's been there. We are well equipped. Don't try and blame others because you're operating from behind. Take ownership and show leadership.
And that's the sex trafficking laws that were in place all along that I was speaking of, that really were maybe presenting somewhat of a problem, but not a crisis. Now it has grown to this way. Stacey, the president plans to meet with Texas Governor Rick Perry and the faith leaders at this consortium that they're going to have while he's in Texas. What do you think the president's going to hear?
Well, that it's an imminent threat. Our borders being secure is about national security. It's national defense. Maybe, I don't know, Homeland Security should take care of it.
Well, you know what else popped today, too, was this statistic that for the first time in years we're seeing an uptick in Chinese nationals crossing the border illegally just in the last couple of weeks.
Well, that just backs up what I just said. It's an imminent threat. Our borders must be secure.
I want to drop the bombshell on behalf of Democratic lawmakers because President Obama's Katrina moment is what's being talked about. Congressman Henry Cuellar, Democrat from Texas, I wonder if he'll stop by and see him while he's in Texas, had this to say to our Neil Cavuto. Watch this.
I hope this doesn't become the Katrina moment for President Obama, saying that he doesn't need to come to the border. He should come down. Not only Governor Perry has asked him to come down, but I know my colleagues, Filemon Vela and Ruben Hinojosa, invited him to come down, and I certainly would ask him to come in, even though I still think he's still one step behind. But he should come down to the border to see exactly what's happening.
Members of your own party are offering to drive you to the border. How do you not take the free ride, Doc A?
Well, you might not take the free Doc A, I like that. You might not take the free ride if you'd have to be yourself at the border, which would mean that you'd welcome the children with open arms and say, here you go, come on in, because the president isn't behind the ball on this. This is the president's intention.
So you disagree with Charles Krauthammer?
No, I agree with him.
He was saying it's a calculated decision politically.
This is the president calculating, saying this is what I believe. We've got to open the borders. And look at, we're going to test your empathy against your intentions here and make everybody deal with a kind of Sophie's choice.
Look, get down to the border. He needs a wake-up call, as Senator Cornyn said. Charles Krauthammer, by the way, also went on to say that the president's completely disconnected from reality. And now we have reportedly that he's backing off of these policy changes, while at the same time, Harris, as you're reporting, he's asking for more money, over $1 billion more money, $3 billion plus. Republican Congressman Raul Labrador, I felt like he really laid it out clearly. He said this is an outrageous thing that's happening to these children. Something's got to be done. He went on to say, but what needs to happen is a strong stance needs to take place. This wavering is what's killing everybody. It needs to take a strong stance against what's happening and against these illegal cartels, he said. Act, do something.
But the wavering,
get down to the border.
That's something that you and I talked about off camera, this wavering. We've seen it on foreign policy in general, and now this is a specific category under that, dealing with our own national security under that same heading.
Look, I'd turn the buses around, as sad as that is, because you got to save the patient. Sometimes you got to do chemotherapy to save the patient. It's very sad.
So you say turn the buses around?
I would turn them around. I might put doctors on them on the way back. I might do that and spend the money for that, but I would turn them around. And secondarily, I'd charge this against any aid to those countries. We're going to do a per capita charge to you for anybody coming across the border. Thirdly, we don't guarantee we'll return the children. If you are recalcitrant enough as a parent to let your kid journey to another country without you, you don't have parental rights anymore, as so says the United States.
I want to talk about this American versus American thing, though, that we're seeing play out. We're seeing this in Marietta, California, and as you watch people in the streets protesting, trying to keep their town from being the dumping point, if you will, for people that they cannot afford. And you can believe that because there's so many cities across the country who are saddled with budgets and trying to make ends meet. But then you've got this, well, if you're not for the children, then you must be against America theme that's kind of going. What do you think about that?
Well, that's something that I feel. It's, they're children. How do you just send them back? But there has to be a line that we draw. We have to draw a line.
How do you go to war? How do you ever go to war knowing people will suffer? because you have to do that to defend the greater good.
Yeah,
yes.
And the problem is, like you mentioned, the China, this becomes a very attractive nuisance for the United States that other people are going to say, look, they're really reluctant to close these borders, to do something to fix the situation. Let's take the time and make the opportunity and send whoever we have over there.
Free entree to get in.
That's the problem. All right. On this edition of When Celebrities Should Just Stop Talking, another A-lister equating media attention to rape. We're going to tell you who nearly got booed off the stage. And a rock star speaking out about how Hollywood reacts to drug abuse versus getting fat.